Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series. But for the first of probably what will be a number of specials throughout the course of Arsenal's Amazon Prime documentary, All or Nothing. We're going to be looking forward to breaking down plenty of the episodes as they come out. But the final, probably not final, but certainly one of the first full-length trailers for the Arsenal All or Nothing series, focusing on the 2021-22 season, has dropped. And I thought what would be quite cool to do is break it down. So I spent the last 10 minutes or so putting together lots of clips that I think that you may have missed, but probably, knowing the beady-eyed among you, have certainly not. You may have missed some, you may have not missed any. You may have missed all of them because you've not watched the trailer. If you want to watch the trailer, the link to the trailer is, of course, in the description. You can go and watch it on the Arsenal.com website and, of course, on Amazon's Twitter handles as well. But without further ado, let's get into things. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Let's move to the first slide, looking at what Mikel Arteta describes as his three main values of respect, commitment, and passion. And all the time we've known Mikel Arteta, he has been someone at the club that has wanted to focus on what he describes as his non-negotiables. Certainly something that I think he has at times compromised. I don't think he's necessarily followed them all the time. And I think certainly at the start of his career at Arsenal, he was finding his feet a little bit and maybe contradicted some of them, treating some players one way, treating some players another way. But certainly as he has grown into the role, he has certainly added and stuck to those principles. And we've seen that with some of the big decisions that have been made at the club ever since he took over and through until the current state of play we find ourselves in 2022. The interesting part of the opening of the trailer was that it showed the anger in what is, I believe, from looking at what we can see on the screen, the game away at Nottingham Forest. You can see that where the Arsenal kits have been completely drained of all colour. If you remember the campaign that went on to try and, mitigate and make people aware of the knife crime that was going on. Arsenal lost to this game horrifically against Nottingham Forest in the third round of the FA Cup, and you can see the anger in this. Hopefully we're going to see more of this. It's going to be intriguing how he reacts to some of the big games like the North London Derby defeats. It's going to be interesting how he reacts to some of the other big defeats that we've seen, the Manchester City game in particular, those first three games of the season. The last trailer that we saw, of course, opened with the 3 games, 0 goals, 0 points. So how he responds to those games compared to a period in the season where actually by this point in January, things weren't too bad. I know that January wasn't good as a month, but things at this point weren't too bad whatsoever. But this will certainly cover that FA Cup exit, and it's not the only part that will be covered as well. Xhaka has plenty of focus on this trailer as well, and there's a small clip of him talking where he says, "I want the pressure." You can imagine that a lot of what has been said about him in the past and the focus on that captaincy stripping a while ago is going to come up once again, and he is going to be a big part of the focus. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a sec, because we've got another clip of Xhaka which kind of alludes to something that was promised in the early production of the All or Nothing series as well. Mohamed El-Neni coming out of a very interesting line indeed, telling the players we're going to bust some balls in a clip from the club's, or I believe this is probably the canteen. They got access to food and stuff like that. I remember there was clips watching the Manchester City and Spurs ones as well. We got these. So El-Neni showing his, I was going to say maturity, although it's not the most mature line in the world. Certainly that leadership skill that he has gained, and he obviously captained the side in that pre-season game against Nuremberg. And El-Neni is going to feature, I imagine, quite heavily as one of those dressing room figures in the picture we're going to see on August 4th when the series comes out. Now, the big part of the series, I think, for a lot of people will be trying to find out a lot more about the Aubameyang captaincy controversy. This, of course, happened in December. Arteta left out Aubameyang from a number of games eventually before, of course, he was stripped of the captaincy and eventually then let go of to Barcelona. During the trailer, we see Arteta speaking to the players and the staff, in which he says that they've decided as a club that Aubameyang, well, actually, he says he will no longer be our captain, which, is a strange sentence when he says he will no longer be our captain. It comes across quite dismissive. We haven't got any context around the sentence, so we're not going to pry too much, and we'll wait until the series comes out and focuses on that. But it is an interesting way of describing that moment. He will no longer be our captain rather than using him by name. So certainly this will be a big part. And not only that will be the reaction of some of the players as well. Alexandre Lacazette, who is a big fan and friend of Aubameyang, although saying that he wasn't when he first joined. And there's an interesting interview of Lacazette you can find online where he talks about how actually he wasn't really friends with him. He didn't particularly like him when he came in and how that relationship developed. But certainly we know by this point in their kind of time together at the club, they were very close friends. And so seeing how Lacazette reacts to that, as well as the rest of the team, is going to be intriguing. But in this clipped shot, he simply just says, wow. Now, we know that these things can be edited and changed, so we don't know whether or not this is in direct response to the captaincy being taken away from Aubameyang, but you can imagine it may have certainly something to do with it. Aubameyang is also seen in another clip in the trailer driving away from the club too, so perhaps that will be an interesting part of the series to be tuning in for. Tavares being subbed against Forest was featured. A number of scenes in the trailer showed the Portuguese youth international coming off the pitch, storming off the pitch, in fact, and throwing his gloves on the floor. I know, factually speaking with people that have been close to Nuno Tavares across the season, that this is not an episode that affected him massively in terms of his long-term feeling of the club. He recovered from this very quickly, and he has a mentality that it was never really going to affect him too much beyond it happening in this very moment. But it will be intriguing to see kind of it in full 4K, how indeed that reaction and relationship between the manager played out after this point. There is another clip in the trailer as well where you see Arteta sitting down on the training pitch with Tavares having a one-to-one conversation. Perhaps that will certainly provide us a little bit more depth and detail about what's been going on between the two after this controversial moment. Now, there has been quite a lot of fans featured in these trailers, and this fan in particular, I don't know who he is, I don't know his name. Maybe if he's in the comments, he can let us know. But he described Arsenal as the worst Arsenal team he'd seen during the trailer. This may come through the period in which we saw, obviously, them talking a lot about the first 3 games of the season, in which we played 3, lost 3, scored 0. There are other parts of the fan reactions we'll talk about a little bit later on, but it does seem that they're not going to be afraid to tackle some of the more negative views about the team. One of the big fears that a lot of people had was that this series would be very much censored and that we wouldn't see all of the negative and the criticisms, because Arsenal have been quite averse to including criticisms about the club in the past. Hopefully that isn't going to happen, and this isn't just going to be the light end of the spectrum. If they're going to go full seeing, the negative side of things, I think it is important that we see the full broad spectrum of views from fans throughout the series. But it does change, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get onto the later points of the trailer. Edu features in this. We don't see Vinay Venkatesham or Josh Kroenke, although both of them were in one of the previous trailers. Josh Kroenke, you could ever so slightly see kind of the side of him, and Vinay did feature in one of the scenes. But Edu does feature in this. He's expected to feature fairly heavily, as he is one of the right-hand men to Mikel Arteta, and of course a massive part of the transfer scene at the club. His quote from the trailer is simply, "Everybody's losing it." At what point in the season? I'm not sure. He could even be talking about fan reactions to potential transfers. Who knows? It could be contextually about what's going on the pitch. It could be possibly about reactions to the transfer window off of it. So that certainly is going to be an interesting part of the series, and seeing how Edu reacts to transfers. Now, one of the biggest highlights of the trailer was seeing this clip of a training ground bust-up. These things are very commonplace. I don't think this is something that people need to take too much out of context or read too much into. Training ground bust-ups between players happen a lot. There is a lot of people in the Arsenal squad, a lot of playing staff, a lot of non-playing staff. You aren't going to get on with everyone. It's just a fact of life. I'd be amazed if everyone listening in this chat box gets on with everybody they work with and likes everybody they work with. It's very rare that happens. And so, as part of life, there's always going to be bust-ups. And here you can see a bust-up between a number of players, including Cedric, Leno, Martinelli, Lacazette, and Salah Ouladamand as well, one of the youth players. Tommy Asu you can see in the background as well. Mikel Arteta and Steve Round are also quickly on the scene. But it looks like Cedric is one of the main people involved in this scrap. And I know that a lot of people got very strong feelings about Cedric. So how that changes throughout the series is one to watch. But I imagine training ground bust-ups may become quite commonplace throughout the series, especially during times where we had some poor results. If you remember the 3 games against Brighton, Southampton, And of course, there was one other as well that's completely slipped my mind now, to be honest. I'm trying to forget about them. Brighton, Southampton, and Crystal Palace was the other one, of course. So perhaps it was during that period. Now, Mikel Arteta apologising to the team in this scene, saying, sorry that sometimes I get mad at you, but I want you to be the best. There's always been a lot about, specifically looking at Arteta's kind of view and feeling about where his ambitions are, what he wants to achieve with this club and what he wants to do with this club. Does he want to just qualify for the Champions League? Does he just want to try and get Arsenal back to where it was? I want to see Arsenal back where they were, winning titles, winning massive accolades and qualifying and hopefully pushing towards a Champions League trophy. And he obviously wants that too. I think that's clear. How he does it may not be in the same way or was what other people wish Arsenal were doing it, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their view. But I don't think there's any discrepancies in knowing that Arteta wants Arsenal to get back to the top. The questions, I think, surrounding Arteta is going to be whether or not he's capable of getting Arsenal to that level. That's going to be the big discussions I think we're going to see. Now, one of the things that's going to be featured throughout the series is probably some backstories on some of the homegrown and younger players that came through the academy. We see this clip here of a very young Emile Smith-Rowe doing a brilliant skill before smashing a volley into the top right-hand corner of a five-a-side goal. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about kind of the young players and the Halen graduates specifically. I think Saka is going to feature quite heavily, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But Emile Smith-Rowe is going to feature heavily. After this scene, we see him, of course, getting involved in his goal in the North London derby, which is going to be a big figure of the first part of the series, I think, in that first North London derby at home that we won and battered Spurs. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it in the reverse fixture, which would have, guaranteed us Champions League football. But that will be the part of the series, I think, that is they're going to be more of a difficult watch. But Smith-Rowe is said to be featuring, as is a number of young players that, of course, came through the academy. Now, Chunks features actually in this. Those of you that aren't aware or don't know who he is, he's a bit of I don't, to be honest, know much about the guy, but he's a social media influencer and massive Arsenal fan. He features in the series, and it kind of begs the question, how many of the celeb fan culture is going to be involved in this series? Arsenal and AFTV, for instance, the relationship between the two has never been well established or particularly well documented, but there is something I think the club are being a lot more welcoming to, is the idea of more fans being featured and there being more fan focus. We're seeing that with the kit launches with Aston Mac, of course, who's a big activist in America, done some amazing work. Fans are being more heavily involved and featuring a lot of the promotional content by Arsenal. But whether or not we see more of this celeb fan culture involved and whether or not that's addressed throughout the series, I think is certainly something that we've got to be curious about, and how the club also reacts to it. And also with this fan kind of reaction coming through the series, whether or not that is addressed by the players or by the club or by the manager. Arteta has been very, very disconnected, I think, from the fan base in terms of actually speaking to supporters. He talks about fans a lot and talks about their importance, but the players are a lot more connected and speak a lot more with, fans and players and get involved with things. We saw the players there recently, in Orlando, getting involved with a lot of fan and club things going on abroad. We've not yet seen Arteta really involve himself in too many fan-connected things, and I think it's something that he actually should work on. I know people won't really buy into that all that much, but I wish it was something that Arteta got involved. I think it would make him a more likable person. But let's see how much fan involvement there is in the series as well. Now, Aaron Ramsdale features in a behind-the-scenes clip of him signing with his family, of course, getting a nice kiss from his mum in the background as well, which is going to hopefully give us a bit of a hint that we should see quite a lot of what went on during the summer transfer window, in which Arsenal spent more money than they have ever spent before during a window. So certainly that is going to feature in the first part, and the series is split into 3 sections with 3 episodes in each section being spread across each week, starting on the 4th of August, then going to the 11th, and then of course to the 18th as well, just after the season starts. So that's going to be intriguing. Aya says, am I involved? No. No, I'm not involved in any way. So if you're going to sit there waiting for me to put my face in, no. And this isn't an Andrew Garfield moment of me lying to the camera. No, don't get your hopes up. If that ever even was a hope for you, that'd be a pretty narcissistic thing for me to be hoping for you to be thinking is going to be involved. But no. Now, the warm weather training camp in Dubai was seen in one of the small clips as well. This involved obviously the return of Nicolas Pepe from the African Cup of Nations, in which there was a big interview around how Arteta said that, Pepe has returned and he's training brilliantly. It's going to be intriguing how Pepe is, involved, and how he is kind of shown across the series, because his relationship with Arteta, as we kind of know, is not necessarily. It's not necessary. I wouldn't say it's a bad relationship. Arteta's just never, I don't think, been sold on him, and I don't think Pepe's therefore would be all that amazed or euphoric about Arteta. But that return during the winter training camp in the Middle East is going to be certainly featured, and we'll see how that affects the players halfway through a season. Now, Mikel Arteta's home and family do also feature. We're going to get a look behind the scenes to the manager from a more personal level. I mentioned there just a second ago that his connection with the fan base has not necessarily been so strong from a social point of view. So this is obviously good to see that he's opened his life up a little bit more, and we'll get to see a little bit more about what the manager's doing, and his family and children have clearly been shown in this as well. A small clip was with Gabriel and Pepe, giving themselves a bit of a bro hug in this moment. And, Pepe and Gabriel are kind of poles apart in regards to their own featuring in Arsenal of late. Gabriel, of course, a signing by Arteta, massively involved in the team. Pepe looking, and this is obviously Gabriel going towards the Arsenal training centre and Nicolas Pepe moving away from the Arsenal training centre. Not reading too much into this, metaphorically speaking, but it is quite a nice metaphoric image of kind of where the pair's futures are. Gabriel facing the training ground, Nicolas Pepe certainly facing away from it. Quite a nice parallel there. Some training ground antics. You can see Kieran Tierney getting involved with Rob Holding. Potentially a game involving water bottles here, or just a ridiculous amount of water bottles on the site of the Arsenal canteen. But Tierney's involvement and leadership is going to be certainly a focus of things as the Arsenal captaincy debate will rage across the start of the season. Martin Ødegaard is still the favourite, it seems, at this point. Kieran Tierney, of course, is a big candidate for it for a lot of people. So his dynamic in the series will certainly be an intriguing watch as well. Moving forwards, Granit Xhaka's recovery from the serious knee injury he suffered in the first North London derby of the season is also expected to be a big part of the early stages of the documentary. They're going to follow his recovery from that knee injury, and we're going to get more of an insight into how these players go through that process. If you remember, Hector Bellerin did a YouTube series where he focused on his recovery from a serious knee injury. We're expected to see kind of an Amazon version of that just following Granit Xhaka. But with Granit Xhaka does come, of course, plenty of discussion surrounding his future, his relationship with the fans, his dealing with abuse. And I imagine we may get a lot more focus into that with Xhaka as well. Moving into the Klopp against Arteta bust up at Anfield. That features in a small scene. I'm not sure we'll get too much insight on this, and it's obviously quite it's very not enigmatic, but evocative is an image, is what I would describe it as, and certainly one that's good for a trailer. But whether or not there's any kind of fallout from this scene that we saw at Anfield, which, to be honest, I think is the moment that Arsenal lost their composure at Anfield. We were 0-0 at this point and ended up losing the game quite significantly. So maybe we see Arteta reflect on this. But to be honest, I'm not sure that we'll see too much broken down from that beyond what we already know. Plenty of celebrations and anger shown in dressing rooms. This game, I was trying to work out what it is. I'm willing to say I think it might be the Leeds game, or potentially the Norwich game away from home, one of those two. But clearly celebrations going on in this, and Ben White very aware that there are cameras everywhere at this point, as all the players are aware that there are cameras, of course, around too. So maybe we see them play up to those just a little bit. And the trailer finishes with a image of Bukayo Saka scoring his goal, of course, in the North London derby, which they have used a lot in the promotional footage. Saka is expected to be a bit of a protagonist during the series, and certainly someone that is focused upon. Whether or not there is any kind of hint towards a brand new contract towards the end of the series, we'll have to wait and see. And that completes your 22 things that you might have missed, but I doubt that many of you did throughout the trailer, the full-length trailer for Arsenal's All or Nothing series. I want to get some reaction from you guys, of course, joining us live in the chat box. If you're watching this on playback, make sure that you leave some comments as to your thoughts on the series. Just before we get your thoughts, we are going to take an ever so quick short break. with the heat wave that we're experiencing in the UK, it's very important that I take on as many fluids as I can. And honestly, this has been a lifesaver for me today. It's a joke. And to be fair, you know, a lot of people in the UK are suffering right now with this. I know that people living abroad may think, what? Why are you moaning about the heat? The UK is always cold. But genuinely, there's some really scary stuff going on right now. I mean, there's a lot of people trapped in London, I know, because of a lot of trains being cancelled because the tracks are melting. That's no exaggeration. So if you are suffering during this period, my thoughts are with you, and I hope that you stay safe and as cool as feasibly possible. Let's go to you guys in the chat box then. Let's go to Amira, who says, honestly, I'm excited for the documentary, but I'd be low-key disappointed if we don't see any of the themed lunches that we've been told about. I mean, as priorities go, Amira, that's up there. Themed lunches, we need to see some behind the scenes of this. Definitely, I'm all on board. I'm all on board for that type of thing. Let's go to Noel, who says, is Lee Judges going to be involved? Him and Edu are now really good friends. I wouldn't go as far as saying they're really good friends, but I would go as far as saying that, you know, who knows if Mr. Judge, I don't actually know, genuinely, whether or not Judges is involved, but who knows? You never put anything past that man. He's capable of miraculous things. Sam says, now we have some idea of the series. Is there anything you really want to see? Obviously, I want to see as much detail about the Aubameyang situation. I also want to see as much about transfers and, you know, the thought process behind potential transfer targets. I'm really interested to see that. You know, as someone who covers transfers to a ridiculous level on the channel, I would love to see more focus on this and more focus specifically on how those players are decided upon, how they decide on who to go for, and what happens if they don't get players. January is going to be a big part of that, and what failed in January. Is there going to be any mention of Dusan Vlahovic? I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe we'll see something for sure. Steve says, I'm definitely getting Xhaka printed on my shirt now. The best captain we can no longer have. A great clip of him taking responsibility. Obviously, yeah, there was that clip in the trailer where he's like, it's all on me sort of thing. I imagine that's probably in a bit of a response to the whole getting sent off against Liverpool at Anfield. He got sent off in another game, Manchester City, of course, too. Who knows? Reactions to the red cards. The Man City home game is going to be a big one, and how we respond to that, and the response from that game, despite it being a big loss. You know, we played really well and deserved to come away with arguably a victory in that. Kay says, hey, Tom, do you plan on doing a frame-by-frame breakdown of the entire season? Hey, look, if it's something that you guys have enjoyed and you've enjoyed this, you know, short looking at clips and breaking them down and going through things, if you've enjoyed it, drop a like on the video, of course, but let me know. If it's something that you think would be good and you've enjoyed this and you want to discuss the series more and we'll do more of these breakdowns, then yeah, I'm happy to do that and put some time into making more of these episodes. Of course, this only involved me breaking down a 1 minute 47 video. Each episode's going to be significantly longer than that, so it might take longer to put those clips together. But if you've enjoyed these types of things, I'm more than happy to do more of these breakdowns of the series as it goes through. Let's go to MVR. It says, any news on getting Xhaka out the door? He's stopping us from buying better midfielders. We'll focus on that in tomorrow morning's transfer show, I'm sure. Abu says, rival fans can banter us all they want about not qualifying for the Champions League, but I'm interested in gaining insight into Arteta's management style, as well as the players on an individual level. Gunnosaurus was absent. That's an interesting thing. I mean, there was no focus on the whole pandemic situation with Gunnosaurus happened a long time ago now, but he wasn't involved. I'm sure he will get some kind of clip. You know, they're going to a lot of Arsenal home games, so you'd think that he would be involved indeed. Rudy says, hey Tom, this is my first live show in 2 weeks as I'm on holiday in the Dominican Republic. Can't get up for the 8 a.m. shows. Well, I hope you're having a fantastic holiday, and thank you for tuning in to this show. I really do appreciate it. Hugh's asking for an episode by episode breakdown. I will do my best to do one if it is something that you absolutely would want to see on the channel. I'm sure that maybe I can get a couple of other people to come on the show, because if it's just me talking about the episodes, you know, maybe it's something to do more fun with people on the channel having a chat as well. Kay says, do you worry about too much insight and airing our dirty laundry? It's a good question. Did Man City? No, but they did win the league. That kind of helps. Spurs, of course. I mean, the thing is with news and football is it moves so fast and things change so quickly. that I'm not sure that actually this will air any kind of dirty laundry that we won't forget about pretty darn quick, because things change in football so quick. And we'll finish off with Sophie from the Hybrid Squad. Of course, I think Sophie's doing a live show. I'm sure she's doing a live show. I think she's doing one with Aston Mack, in fact. So make sure you go and check it out. Which player do you think fans will fall in love with even more after watching the series? I'm hoping Martin Ødegaard, not because he is my favourite player, but actually more so because it is most likely that he will become club captain, it seems. So I'm hoping that throughout the series we get a better insight into him as a player and what he can bring as a captain of the club potentially next season. Thank you so much for tuning in for this first breakdown of the Amazon documentary, focusing on the first full-length trailer that we've seen. If you've enjoyed it, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be live a little bit later on this evening, hopefully. There may be a reason why I can't, and it does involve a lot of the heat and specifically people being trapped in London because of trains being cancelled. But hopefully everything sorts itself out and we can indeed still do a podcast a little bit later on today. If not, I will be back at 8 a.m. tomorrow. If you're tuning into this wanting to see a breakdown of the trailer and you've gone, what on earth is he talking about? Maybe you're new to the channel. We do a show focused on Arsenal transfers and news every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. If you live in the East, if you live in the West, you might have to get up a little bit earlier or later in the day, but it is still worth tuning in for, I promise you, as we round up everything and also have a great discussion with our number one chat box in the whole of the Arsenal sphere. I will see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.